Hi and welcome to another Node-RED video, and in this video we're going to look at creating a dashboard for the Eztimer node. Although it's for the Eztimer node, it could be for any node, it could be for the file node, any node that allows you to programmatically change the input values. Now the Eztimer node is a very popular node, and it's basically a time switch. It lets you to switch things on and off at set times of the day. It's also a very flexible node. It's very flexible in the way you can actually set the timer. Now, if you haven't got it, you'll need to install it using the Manage Palette and Install option and install it there. Okay, I've got it installed and it's installed here. Now, the idea behind this video came from actually a comment on the channel, and basically someone asking whether there was a dashboard, there was a timer with a dashboard, and I haven't found a timer with a dashboard, but it's actually quite straightforward to create a dashboard for a timer, and that's what I'm going to demonstrate in this video. So here's our Eztimer node. Now normally you set this by opening it up here, and you set the various times on and off, time of day, etc. Here through the admin interface. Now what we're going to do in this video is we're going to set it this time. We're going to set it by using a dashboard. So we're going to create a user interface here. We're going to be able to set the times of that timer. And obviously it's a lot easier and a lot more user friendly to do it that way than to actually go into the admin interface and do it that way. But here it is at the moment, and all I've done is set it up with a couple of inject nodes, and we can change the state on or off, on and off, and you can see it here. The status is displayed here, and if I go to the dashboard you can see it's off, which is a 0, and you can see when it comes on, which is a 1. Now if I look at the info for this node, you can scroll down here and it will tell you that you can actually change this programmatically through the message.payload, and you can set it on and set it off, which is what I'm doing here when I'm triggering it on and off. And you can set the timers here: message.payload suspend, message.payload on time, and we can set the off time as well. And that's basically what I'm going to do. I'm just going to set the on time and the off time. I'm not going to set any of the other parameters which I could set. This is purely for demonstration, and the flow will be available, and you can develop it further and you can modify it so you can change all of the things that you can set through the admin interface here that you'll be able to set through the dashboard. Okay, let's disable this. In version 1 they've moved the delete and the disabled buttons, and I've actually deleted flows when I meant to disable them, so be very careful if you've upgraded to Node version 1. And I'm going to enable the other flow which I almost deleted it again. So this is our timer node, and let me show you the dashboard that's deployed first so we can actually see it. And what I've got is the current time. I put this in just so we can actually see things rather than me actually showing you the time in the right hand corner on the PC. I put it on the dashboard. We've got something that shows the switch state, which we did before, and here we can set the on time and the off time, and once we've set them we can submit it. So on time, off time, submit. That's all I'm going to do in this video. So these are simple text node inputs, and there is a format for the time, and we have to enter it in hours, minutes and seconds, and in this format here. So it's 13:14:17. So here are our dashboard nodes. These are text nodes which we get from down here, text input. And if I look at them here, there's the topic on time, which is very important because we're going to use that to determine which text box has actually sent the input. And if I look at the off time, we do the same here. Off time is the topic. And if I look at the submit, we do the same here. Submit is the topic. And we're going to use the topics to determine which text, or sorry, which node has actually sent the data in. Now what I'm going to use here is flow variables to store the data before we submit it. So when I enter the on time, it gets sent into the main function, and the main function stores that value. When I set the off time, it goes into the main function, stores the value. When I submit, it then submits that data off to the timer node. There it is there. Now if I look in the main function here, you can see here, if I go down there, I look for the topic. If it's on time, then I set the flow variable on time to the payload, and I do the same with the off time. And now if it's the topic, then we're going to submit it. Now before I submit it, I check that the time is actually in the correct format, and I've got a function here called check time, which basically checks the format of the time. I'm not going to go through that function in detail, you can do that yourself, but basically all it's doing is to check that I've got the correct format for the time. What happens if we haven't got the correct format for the time? I'm using a function node with two outputs. One output goes to the timer, which sets the timer. The other output goes into the switch state here, which basically will produce an error message. So it will tell us that we've incorrectly formatted the time and we need to do it again. Now I've used the function node to store the variables using flow variables. Now I could have used the change node here. I could have sent these, if I find the change node. So I could have used the change node here, and I just wire that into there, and I could have set the flow variable on timer, and I could have set it there to the message payload. Either way will work. The reason I've used the function node to do it is because we don't just need to set it, we also need to check the values, and we also need to check for the submit. So we need some kind of functionality. So I might as well do it all in the function node, because I'm going to need a function node anyway, which is why I didn't use the change node. But if I was using this on a different part of the flow, then I would probably just use the change node instead of using a function node to store the value. Either one will work, as I say. So let's delete that, don't need it. Okay, so let's just go back through the function node, and I'll just take you through that in a bit more detail. So we got our function check time, which checks the input and it returns an error flag, and we start off with false, and if any of these things occur, we set the error flag to true. And then we've got a check for the topic, and then we got the check for the submit. So if we've got submit, so I get the on time and the off time from the flow variables because we stored them there. I set the error flag to false, then I call the check time function with on time, and if that works, in other words, if it returns true, it means we've got an error, so I set the error flag to true, and I do the same with the off time. If it returns true, I set the error flag to true, and I check the error flag. If we haven't got an error, then I create the payload to send into the Eztimer, and it's set as an object, so I'm setting the on time and I'm setting the off time, and then I put that new payload into the payload object and I return it, and I return null on the second output, which means this one is the error output, this one here. So we haven't got an error, it's working. Now if we have got an error, then I set the message 1 payload to error, and I set a null on the output 1, and I return the error on output 2. And that's it. Just a quick note, using return null or just simple return without a message, so instead of using return message you just use return, basically sends nothing out on the output, which means that the flow stops there. So it's a commonly used thing to do, either use a simple return without a message or just use return and return null. Okay, let's see it working. I'm just going to set the on time, set it to 07, and the off time to 14:08, and submit it. We just have to wait until it comes on. We can actually, if we go out to the admin interface, we can see the time being set in the node. I'll just quickly do that before it goes. You can see it here, it's been set to 14:07 and off to 14:08. I'm just going to pause it so you don't have to sit there and watch this timeout. And there it is, it's set the state to 1, which we expect. And again, I'll just pause it here so we don't have to sit and watch the timeout. And we should see when it gets to 08 it goes to 0. There it is, gone to 0. Okay, so that's working okay. Now let's do it again, but this time we're going to set an incorrect timer. So we go to 1409 and we'll set this to 70, which obviously is invalid, and submit it, and we come back with an error, the time was not set. If we set it back to 0, and this time we set it like that, again we get the error, it's not set because it needs the 00, it needs something, it needs 2 digits there to work correctly. So our error function's working okay. This is not completely debugged, this flow, but I say feel free to take it and to develop it further if you want to. Now let's just go back to the admin interface. Something I'd like to show you you'll probably find useful when debugging nodes. If you go here, you can see the data, the context data. This shows you the context data, which is per node. So if this got a context variable, we'd see it in the node. It's got a flow variable, and the flow variable shows you the variables on the flow. So it's only going to show the flow variables on this flow here, not the variables on this flow here, because this is a different flow. So, and if it was using global variables, it doesn't matter what flow I was on, then I would see the global variables in here. You'll see I've got global variables, and you can see my flow variables is here, and those are the variables that we set here with our timer here. Now if I go on to timer 1, you can see the flow variables are empty because I'm on a different flow. Now if you change the values here, you'll need to go and refresh the flow here to see the changes in the variables. Very, very useful for debugging this, the context data. Let's say there's no, if I wanted to see the context variables, I'd have to highlight the flow with the context variable, and then I refresh that. I say there's no context variables being used in this. This is I haven't mentioned because it's a bit ancillary to the flow. It's just the timer. This is basically creating the timer there, and you may find it very useful because it's actually got a time formatter here, so you can see how I format the time to get it to display the way it's displayed in there. So it's just taking a date object and it's formatting it into hours, minutes and seconds using the get seconds, get minutes and get hours. Okay, let's bring us to the end of the video. Although we did it with the easy timer, we could do that with the file node and other nodes. Any node that will accept configuration changes using the message object is a candidate to use a dashboard in that manner to actually change them. Okay, so if you've got any comments on the video, then please leave them below. If you like the video, then click on the like button below. And if you want to get notified of new videos on the channel, then you need to subscribe to the channel and click on the notification bell. And feel free to share this video on social media if you do use social media. And until the next time, goodbye.